the fact that Jews consider food to be so integral to our holiest moments is actually a very strange thing. Non-Jews who come to Shabbat meals are flabbergasted that we basically have a Thanksgiving every week. I think that is another one of those extraordinary Jewish values that trickles down culturally. All Jews love food, but most Jews don't know why we love food. And again, this is one of these things that has extremely deep theological roots. And we can trace that back to our understanding of the universe and everything and why we're here. It's one of the deepest ideas in Judaism. It's probably one of my favorite. And that is that if you compare Judaism to almost every other religion on the planet, most religions see the physical world as an enemy or an obstacle to holiness. It is there to suck us in, to tempt us, to take us away from God. And the way to get closer to God is to fast, to become ascetic or abstinent, and to abstain from the pleasures of the physical world. And this is something where you can very clearly see that there's a major difference between Jews and almost everybody else. And the reason why that is because Jews see the physical world in an extremely different way. We see the physical world not as an obstacle to holiness, but rather as an essential tool in order to get closer to holiness.
This is the Dilemmas on Screen, a Jewish perspective podcast, where we take ambiguous moral situations in fictional popular movies and TV shows and analyze them from a Torah lens. Rabbi Friedman, thank you so much for coming back and so soon.
It's great to be here, and I'm so glad we're back so soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we are talking about Jewish values. So just as like context, in the immediately previous episode where we spoke about Nobody Wants This, we had Rabbi Rick Fox. We spoke about Nobody Wants This in the context of intermarriage in terms of what's the Jewish perspective on it. And one of the questions that came up was, Rabbi Rick was talking about how, intermarried couples, their kids grow up confused because you have these conflicting values that they're raised with. And so we asked, what are these values? And we gave an answer. And I actually got some feedback from the listeners. And they asked, I kind of wish you would explore that a little more deeply. Can we double click on that and focus in? And so that's kind of what this episode is about. I figured that's a really good question. What are Jewish values? And the answer that was given was, one parent might want to go to church and the other, parents taking them to a bar mitzvah, and there's Christmas and, Hanukkah, and what exactly are you doing? And that's true. But I can't imagine the whole difference comes down to, are you going to church or synagogue? Are you celebrating Hanukkah or Christmas? Just as a fun example, I'm Canadian, Independence Day is July 1st. In the US, it's 4th of July. Okay, so when do you celebrate Independence Day? At the end of the day, who cares? What difference does it really make? Does that really tell you everything you need to know about the culture? So with that, what conflict might there be in these homes? As in, what is the difference between Jewish and non-Jewish values? That is the question.
Yeah, so I wish I could tell you that a lot of modern couples that are dating out or intermarried are going to come up against these deep theological conundrums that they just won't agree about. I think unfortunately we're past that, and probably the reason why is because most Jews today who don't grow up with a strong religious background have probably already been assimilated into the general Western value system. And so they're probably growing up with relatively similar values to other denominations. That ends up meaning that it's really just going to be arguments about, a tree or a menorah in December. It's going to be very difficult to identify some of the deeper rifts because, frankly, many Jews are so far inculcated with Western values, much more than Jewish values. All that being said, I think that you still can find some cultural vestiges of actual Jewish values that have been passed down simply because people's beliefs tend to influence the way that we behave. And so much so that it could be now that you've got 3 or 4 generations removed from the last religious member of your family, and yet still there are going to be some holdovers of the way that you think and act that are actually based in something more theological. So I think those might actually be cultural touchstones where there will be some rifts. So I'll give you an example. I was reading an article just a couple days ago about a journalist who was raised in the South in the United States and decided to make the move up to New York because they thought it would be better for their career. And they ended up at some sort of a dinner party where they and their partner were sitting there when everyone at the party started like getting into a heated argument. And these two Southerners were like shifting in their seats so so awkwardly because they were like, oh my God, I can't believe this dinner party has just devolved into like a massive fight. And afterwards, I think it was a coworker or something. This person went up to the coworker and said, I feel so bad for you that your dinner party just fell apart like that. And the coworker's like, what are you talking about? That wasn't a fight. We're Jewish. We talk that way. That's how we speak to each other. So it was this amazing moment where this actual cultural divide created a lost in translation moment because Jews are actually used to having argument and disagreement built into their conversations. There's a well-known thinker, intellectual named Eric Weinstein, who also talks about this, that the way that he was raised, he and his other well-known brother, Brett Weinstein, the way that they were raised was to like debate things at the dinner table with their parents. And that's what sharpened their minds intellectually and caused them to be these constant gadflies and questioners of the status quo. And that's who they are today. And I think that that's something that might actually become a source of tension in a family that's not used to it. There's these, a good example of this, I think, is the old movie Meet the Parents, where Ben Stiller does play this Jewish guy, and he's marrying into this traditionally waspy family. And there is a lot of disconnect, and especially in the sequels where he meets his zany parents, his absolutely embarrassing Jewish parents. And you can actually tell that like there's such miscommunication because of where they come from and what they're used to, that it is actually going to create a lot of unnecessary tension in the family. So I think that's a good example of a modern day case where we can see this actually playing out in real time.
But that's interesting because I don't remember. I can't recall if this was in the show, but there is a moment at the end of like the season finale for season 2 where they talk about other things that are Jewish. But for sure, that is definitely one of them. That like Jews like to. You're
talking about the show Nobody Wants This.
Correct. Nobody Wants This. Yeah, that could not Meet the Parents. But yeah, but in Nobody Wants This, where there is this discussion of things that are Jewish. I don't actually think that's funny because that would be an easy shoe-in, like the love of argumentation. I almost wonder if there are other cultures that also argue like that. But to be fair, I mean, that is distinct. Like that is a distinctly Jewish thing in terms of our entire Talmudic text is literally filled with arguments. Even in the Torah, like you'll have people arguing, famous like Abraham arguing with God, Moshe arguing with God, which definitely needs to be understood in context. But that is definitely a good example. Would you say like are there any other examples where like there are certain Jewish values that get disseminated through?
I want to double click on that because you mentioned that there actually is Talmudic and even biblical precedent for this love of argumentation. That it's not just a cultural thing. The culture comes from something actually deeply theological. The idea that a human being is allowed to argue with God is a crazy notion. The idea that Abraham we praise him for having a debate with God. God, are you really going to destroy the city of Sodom? What would people think? The judge of all of the earth wouldn't carry out justice? And then later, Moshe does the same thing. He says, what, are you going to kill the entire Jewish people? What are the Egyptians going to say? They're going to say God didn't have the capability, God forbid, he could take his people out of Egypt, but couldn't take them all the way to the promised land. And we have multiple people throughout the Tanakh who are praised for arguing and debating with God. Now compare that with, for example, the Catholic idea that the Pope is infallible and that there is no arguing with the Pope, and that for many millennia, for many hundreds of years, church doctrine was not something that was accessible to the people. They kept it intentionally in Latin, in a language that people could not understand, because the priest was the authority in the town, and other people did not have the authority, they didn't have the permission to argue back. It wasn't until Martin Luther's Protestant Reformation where that even became a thing. But contrast that, there's this moment, I love these moments when, you see it playing out so clearly. There was one Friday night I was in a particular neighborhood in Jerusalem, and I was visiting a shul where the rabbi, who was a very well-established scholar, Talmud Chacham, got up and started giving his Friday night Devar Torah, and he was speaking about a matter of halacha, of Jewish law. This happens to be a neighborhood where there are many dozens of highly prestigious Jewish scholars who also live there. It's, the per capita number of rabbis in this particular neighborhood is through the roof. And at a certain point in his speech, somebody who's sitting there, one of the congregants, starts arguing with the rabbi in the middle of his speech. And it's just beautiful. It's not an awkward moment. It's uncomfortable. It was almost expected that people would voice their opinions back. That is so the opposite of an uneducated population who has to just sit there and receive wisdom. So one very powerful, and I think very beautiful Jewish value is the idea that truth comes not just from the top down, but also from the bottom up. That because of the divine nature of a human being, our constant dialogue with God is what helps to express and to evolve truth in front of our very eyes. We play a role in the unfolding of truth. We're not just passive bystanders or recipients of something that's being told. Now, obviously, there is something called revelation. There is Mount Sinai. We receive the text of the Torah, and obviously, there is a baseline of divine law that cannot be argued upon. But after that, once God gives us the rules, then he says, now you guys figure it out. Now you guys, what's your opinion on the matter? And we have a very real say in that. And that's something so beautiful and so powerful and something to be treasured. The fact that we argue is such a marvel of what it means to be a Jew. Because from a deeply religious perspective, it means that we understand the power and the potential of every human being to be a source of divine truth themselves. And now, of course, you can see why the Jewish people produce so many famous scientists. I mean, these are the people who are looking at the world and saying, I wonder why that happens like that. Or, I'm not sure your conclusions are correct about this particular principle. It takes somebody who has the guts to question the status quo is the person who's going to make that brand new discovery. Not only that, but I once was having a conversation with a professor of Jewish humor. I kid you not. And his theory was that the reason why Jews are so funny is also because of this phenomenon. The fact that we're able to challenge God, to look at things and notice what's not right with the world, well, that's the beginning of all of comedy. From there, you can start to, you've got the whole Jerry Seinfeld bit about airplanes and tiny razor blade dispensers and all the little strange quirks of reality. That comes from our ability to criticize, to notice what's not going right, and to feel like we have the the gumption. We have we can be we can have a voice to say something about it. So you see where all of this Jewish pride in our our Nobel Prize winners and our comedians, all the people that culturally Jews rally around, that stems from a far deeper and far more noble understanding of what it means to be a human being. And that's an entirely Jewish value.
I actually love that. And I like that because, again, it is a thing. Like, that actually does explicitly come up in the show. Like, again, in that scene when Esther is talking to Joanne, she says, funny, see, you're funny. That's Jewish. But I like, in terms of, it's kind of like, okay, is it really that superficial, just you're funny, so you're Jewish? But I like that kind of deeper look. Like, there is a deeper value here that is feeding into that capacity to be humorous. There were other things that you said in terms of, you're always eating the challah before you're supposed to. We all do that. That's Jewish. And I was like, I didn't know that was a thing, first of all. And second, I was like, not listening to the rules, or like not having self-control. I mean, not to be critical here, but that kind of seemed a little almost like silly. And I guess I want to get a sense of a lot of the examples she gives. They're cute, but they almost seem like anachronisms, or just these little particular details that didn't seem too Jewish. Like, is that, we spoke about the love for arguing. That is a thing. And that's actually a really cool example where you gave the example of a Southerner coming to a Jewish table and seeing what it was like. Are there other examples where you've seen or heard of such a thing? Or is it like,
I wanted to pick up on your example that you gave from the show. Oh, you always eat the challah before you're supposed to. Isn't that so Jewish? So the answer is no, that's not really so Jewish. But there is a grain of truth in there, which is that that Jews have a particular fondness for food mixed with religious traditions. And I think that throws some people for a loop. The fact that Jews consider food to be so integral to our holiest moments is actually a very strange thing. Non-Jews who come to Shabbat meals are flabbergasted that we basically have a Thanksgiving every week, and it's like, what are you guys doing? Like, is this? Are you celebrating something? And the answer is, like, we're celebrating the creation of the universe, and this is how we sanctify it and give thanks to God. And by the way, we actually drink wine, despite the fact that many other religions consider wine to be totally off limits. We celebrate it and we love it, and we use all of these very, very physical substances in order to make ourselves happy and put us into a more religious mood. I think that is another one of those extraordinary Jewish values that trickles down culturally. All Jews love food, but most Jews don't know why we love food. And again, this is one of these things that has extremely deep theological roots. And we can trace that back to our understanding of the universe and everything and why we're here. It's one of the deepest ideas in Judaism. It's probably one of my favorite. And that is that if you compare Judaism to almost every other religion on the planet, most religions see the physical world as an enemy or an obstacle to holiness. It is there to suck us in, to tempt us, to take us away from God. And the way to get closer to God is to fast, to become ascetic or abstinent, and to abstain from the pleasures of the physical world. And this is something where you can very clearly see that there's a major difference between Jews and almost everybody else. And the reason why that is because Jews see the physical world in an extremely different way. We see the physical world not as an obstacle to holiness, but rather as an essential tool in order to get closer to holiness. So this is probably a much longer discussion, but I like phrasing it the way that I heard a particular philosopher say it. He said most religions are what he calls up and out religions. In other words, the purpose of the religion is to recognize that this world is suffering, this world is an illusion, this world is temptation, and therefore the goal of the religious practice is basically to leave the world. To enter heaven, to stop being reincarnated, what have you, many different iterations of the same idea. But in Jewish understanding, this world is not a prison. It's not a booby-trapped hellscape. It's not an obstacle. Famously, there is no mention, no overt mention of the afterlife in the entire Torah, and many reasons are given for that. But one of the reasons that resonates a lot with me is because there is an afterlife, but that's not what we should be focusing on. We should be focusing on elevating this world. There is a concept even that many, many scholars ascribe to, which is that this world is going to be the next world. We have to unleash, reveal the inherent beauty and holiness and divinity of everything in this world. And only once we do that, then this world becomes transformed into a perfect world. That is a wildly revolutionary perspective and understanding of physicality, and it's something that is shared with almost no other religion. So that's another one of those things you can be extremely proud of.
That's actually, I was not anticipating going there, but that's awesome. And if I can build on that, I remember also hearing this idea for the first time in Rabbi Akiva Tatsi's Letters to a Buddhist Jew, where he fleshes this out in terms of, the whole book is actually, so I live in Chicago right now, and it was written with David Gottlieb from Northbrook. So that was kind of cool that there was like this connection there. But Rabbi Tatz is writing to David Gottlieb, who's this guy who's exploring Buddhism. And one of the things that Rabbi Tatz talks about is it's important to talk about like what was the revolution that was Judaism? Like what new idea did Abraham bring into the world? And one of the ideas he says is many people think it's monotheism. That is not true. In fact, it's demonstrably not true because first, Shem and Aver, right? We're like, when we talk about hatred of Jews, it's called anti-Semitism or anti-Shemiut. That Sem is Shem, who's one of the sons of Noah, and he had his own yeshiva. He was expounding Torah in the world. He was talking about the one God. And moreover, Jacob, right, the third of the Avos, Abraham's grandson, learned in that yeshiva of Shem and Aver, right? But he says, what was Abraham's revolution? The fact that we take the physical world and we use it and to elevate the physical world into a godly tool to connect to God. That completely, first I'd never heard this before, and it just completely blew my mind and totally changed my perspective on. I was like, oh, that's what we're doing when we give charity. That's what we're doing when we keep kosher. Now it's not just food that sustains us. No, it's like it is a tool to connect to God. Just like you said, that is unheard of in religion, in terms of most religions, as you said, try to remove us from the world. It's a barrier. It's an obstacle. Here we have this idea of like one of my favorite mitzvahs. It's mind blowing when you think about it. Is the idea of paying a worker on time and preferably the day you hire him. You walking into a cab, him driving you, and you paying him 50 shekels, you just fulfill the biblical commandment because he performed a service for you and you paid him. The idea that something like that would be a way of connecting to God, you've just fulfilled a Torah level commandment, is absolutely baffling. That was the revolution of Abraham. I'm sure you have more to say about this, but that's something that really resonated with me.
Yeah, well, it's one of those ideas where before you heard it, and the moment you heard it, you thought it was a wildly awesome, crazy, original novel idea, and then the more you think about it, the more you realize that it's like the only thing that makes sense. Because how could you imagine that there is a God who is one, who rules everything, who is in charge of everything? There is nothing besides him, except that physicality is horrible and evil, and that's not in the domain of the holy. Like, that doesn't even make sense. So to make it very simple, if God really is everywhere, if God he infuses everything, then that means that everything must have some divine potential inside of it. There's no other way to reconcile real, true monotheism without that. So I don't know what people were thinking about before, but the idea that Abraham goes around and starts saying, guys, you realize that like the way you eat your steak is that's also holy. The way that you treat your guests, that's also holy. The way that you drink your wine is also holy. It just seems now to be the most obvious idea in the world. But once you realize that, it is the key to unlocking a whole other life. Because now you look around your life and you think, well, hold on a second. How can I have a job and be a holy person? Well, the answer is it depends on your perspective. If you see your job as a means towards being a Kiddush Hashem in the workplace, to inspire other people to what it means to be honest and upright, to understand that the paycheck you get from your job is also a means to an end towards being able to give to charity, supporting your family, having time to learn Torah and being able to afford to do mitzvahs and all the things that you need to do in your life, then it starts to remove a lot of the conflicts that a lot of people are bothered by. Things like, how am I as a religious person allowed to enjoy leisure time? Well, the answer is, well, what are you using leisure time for? If leisure time is an escape, if you say, well, leisure time's over there, and then I'll get back to my real life as a person who does meaningful things, then you've just created this massive divide between physical comfort and something that's spiritual and holy. But if instead you look at your leisure time as a way to recharge, as a way to regain energy so that you can go back and do meaningful things, then all of a sudden your leisure time is now part of a mitzvah. It's part of a mitzvah. So I see this as the key to a holistic life, such that if you're doing it properly, and that's a big if, then everything in your life, every pleasure, every physical comfort, everything that you need to engage with in this physical world becomes part of divine service. But it's very conditional, because the other religions, which are very afraid of physicality, are half right. Physicality is tempting. It can drown you. It can make you blind to things that are much more meaningful and important. And it happens to people all the time. So Jews who do engage more liberally in the physical world need to be extra careful to make sure that every time we eat, Rav Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin, who lived in the end of the 19th century, said that the eating, that every time you eat, he calls it the moment of war. The moment of war. Why? Because eating is either the most elevated, divine, sublime mechanism to connect to God, or is the most debased, degrading, animalistic behavior that you could ever engage in, because all you're doing is just feeding your stomach and your desire for sweet and yummy things. So which one is it going to be? This is a difficult test, but as Jews, we don't run away from the test. We say, bring it on. I'm ready to engage with physicality in an appropriate and healthy way such that it becomes holy. That's what we're here to do.
I love that. I remember Rabbi Tetz, who, as far as I understand, is not Hasidic, but he was talking about how, I can't remember if it was in Letters to a Buddhist Jew or if it was in one of his lectures, but he spoke about this idea of eating. And he said, a lot of Hasidim, they'll have a tish, right, where they watch their Rebbe eat. Now he says, like, what's behind this? What's the depth behind this custom? They're just people watching? Like, what's going on? And so he's like, look, you want to tell me that watching my Rebbe speak words of Torah, of course he looks like an angel, but to take the act of eating, where you eat like a horse eats, and to turn that into an elevated function, that is completely different. That is amazing. And that's something you need instruction on how to do. How does a person eat? It says a lot. And also just to keep, this is great.
It's a can of worms. It's a beautiful Pandora's box here that we've opened, because there's so much to speak about. But at the end of the day, it's a gorgeous Jewish value. It's something that Jews should and can take to heart and wear it proudly, that we are champions of those who are entrusted with this physical world. and asked, demanded to engage with it in a beautiful way.
I've actually heard that Abraham innovated this idea that you can take the physical world and elevate it into godliness, that is actually like the root cause of anti-Semitism. People don't like that. They don't like the idea that, like, yeah, you can engage morally with this world. That antagonized a lot of people, like a lot of the tyrants of the day, or the tyrant, right, Nimrod, who was the prime antagonist of Abraham, because he's like, look, Shem, who's off in his mountaintops doing his whole meditation spiritual thing, that's fine. Keep it in the mountaintops. Don't bring it over here. That's not what Abraham was doing. Abraham was getting involved in the world. And it was in that context that I heard that apparently Adolf Hitler in Mein Kampf, I wish I had the quote so I could have looked it up before, but in Mein Kampf said, we need to blot out the Jews because they are the moral compass of the world. Now, I'm sure many people would, that would upset them, but in terms of, because like, oh, what do you mean? Like, what, are Jews better? Which I actually want to talk about in just a moment. But like, what does that mean? Like, but the fact that Hitler himself, like, it's puzzling to understand why Hitler, when he's in the process of losing the war, was using his train system not to move his soldiers to the front lines, but to bring Jews to the gas chambers and blot them out. Why? He says why. He said because the Jews are the moral compass of the world. We have to stomp them out to allow nature to take its course in terms of the survival of the fittest. And Jews famously proclaim, no, we have to take care of people who cannot take care of themselves. That is not a natural way of looking at things. It's funny when you think about back, they're like, oh, wow, Rome and Greece. Okay, Greeks committed infanticide, and as far as I understand, Aristotle encouraged this practice, or at least was totally fine with it. Rome, they had a Colosseum which apparently fit 80,000 people. So I'm in Chicago. The Bears, unfortunately, just recently lost. But our stadium can hold 60,000. The Colosseum could hold 80,000. Watching people murder each other for public entertainment. This is not a Jewish perspective. People don't like that. They don't want to be restricted by the sense of morality.
Okay. I mean, maybe. I think you'll have a lot of people who will claim that, I think the Christians will also say that we found the Greek and Roman practice to be morally abhorrent, and we do stand up for morality everywhere, and we want to treat the poor with dignity, and we want to help those around the world.
But they got those ideas from us.
Yes, but even then, I think that there's still a divide to be made. So let's take, for example, Christianity. I think if we go back to our original idea of elevating the physical, I think that Christianity does not necessarily share that sentiment. Although in other words, I want to make the distinction. It's entirely possible that Christians can understand that morality extends into the physical world, right? Morality, the way that we treat other people and the way that we should behave as human beings, and even the charity that we give. But there's still an element of, yes, but to be really holy means to separate yourself from the physical world. And that physicality ultimately cannot be redeemed. That's the idea of original sin. That's the reason why priests have to remain abstinent, right? The highest members of their clergy cannot engage in physical intimacy because it's just not something, it's too tempting, it's too corrupted. And even further, there's this line in the Christian Bible that says, rend unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and rend unto God what is God's, which has been written about extensively in Christian theology. And I will say straight out that there isn't an overall consensus about what that line means. But many Christian writers have basically said, religion is, let's confine religion to the church, because let's keep church and state separate, essentially. There's a secular government. Let the secular government worry about the taxes and the roadworks and the dirty things that happen on the floor of the Senate. That's not for good religious people to be engaging in. But I think the Torah takes a totally opposite approach. And we see it from all the stories of Tanakh that are essentially dealing with how to maintain and set up a truly holy form of government. That's what many of those stories are about. Now, unfortunately, human nature is human nature, and oftentimes people fail in those endeavors. But we don't say that there should be a fundamental divide between religion and politics. I mean, yes, there is a place for a municipal government which is in charge of taxes and economy and all the technical things that make the world run. But that should just follow the same pattern as everything else we've been describing about physicality, is that those policy decisions ultimately should be informed by, are we creating a state that is more conducive to connecting to God? That's how we're supposed to look at our civics policy, not as something that's totally separate from religion. So again, I see this very, very clearly, that it's something that a lot of other religions do not share, that 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 our ability to create something connected and divine extends to all areas of human endeavor, even the ones that seem to be the most dirty and icky, the marketplace, as you mentioned, the numerous laws that surround how we are to go about making a living, as opposed to saying, no, all religious people should just be poor and avoid that all corrupting influence of money. We don't say that. That's another reason why, again, culturally, Jews are very comfortable with making money and are not ashamed of it and see it as a source of pride if they are able to do business honestly and successfully. So that's another good cultural touchstone, which has trickled down from a much deeper source, that when done properly, we are not afraid of the physical world because we know that it can and should be used as a means to an end towards connecting with God.
That's awesome. And pedaling back just a moment to one of the things that we had mentioned, which was we call ourselves the chosen people, right? I don't remember exactly if we call us this or God calls us this, but the chosen people. And we can't avoid, I think, the topic of the idea of intermarriage, in that we say that it's not appropriate for Jews to marry non-Jews, Jews to marry other Jews. I want to kind of double click on that. Is that just is there a difference between Jews and between Jews and non-Jews? And what does that mean? Is it like just a straight bigotry issue? It's like, look, white people and black people are different and they shouldn't get married. Is it like, I think we can all recognize that that's wrong. That being said, again, how do we view this? Is this just like a bigoted, elitist form of, national pride, where we say there's Jews and there's everyone else who's beneath us, and that's why we don't marry them? Can we just like kind of focus on that? Is there a difference, and what is the nature of that difference?
Yeah. So I think there's many ways to approach this question, and it's something that has to be dealt with sensitively, not because we're trying to engage in apologetics or we're trying to sidestep the question or we're trying to secretly hide our sense of superiority. I think that there is an understanding that Jews are different, but what exactly does that mean, and in what way are we different? That's kind of what we have to explore. So the Kuzari, which was a book written by Rabbi Yehuda Levi, about 1,000 years ago, makes an interesting analogy. He says, in a certain sense, all the nations of the world represent different body parts of one body. And the Jewish people, you could understand, they're the heart. Or if you want to understand it differently, maybe they're the brain. So if I were to ask you, what's more vital to a human life, working kidneys or a brain? What would you say?
I think it's fair to say the brain.
I would say they're both absolutely vital to the maintenance of human life. You cannot survive without working kidneys. You'll die. The same thing is true with your liver. The same thing's true with your intestines. All of these are vital organs. You take one of them away and you're dead. You don't have a functioning human being. However, you can still say that there is some sort of a hierarchy when it comes to the different organs of the body, because the brain is what informs all of the other organs what their job is to do. Or you could understand it as the heart is what gives the lifeblood, literally the lifeblood, to all the other organs so that they can do their jobs effectively. So even though every organ is vital, there are one or two organs which allow all the other organs to do their job, or which enable and empower the other organs to do their job. I think that that's a very, very good analogy for the Jewish people, which is that we are chosen, but chosen to do what? Well, in a certain sense, we're kind of chosen to inform all the other nations of why and how they are vital for the upkeep of all of humanity. Every nation is essential. You can't do the job without one of the puzzle pieces. But there is a particular nation which has been endowed with the responsibility of reminding everybody else why they're important and what the ultimate job is to be done. So that to me is a very compelling way of understanding chosenness. But I want to say something else, and this will be a little bit of a callback to an earlier episode that you and I did. I would like to claim that for all of the anger and all of the frustration that gets raised around this question of the chosen people, and it comes back and it gets thrown in our face all the time. You Jews, you think you're so great, you call yourselves the chosen people. Who do you think you are? I would suggest that almost everybody who says that is just making it up. I think that people are a lot more comfortable with the idea of chosenness. And let me be more specific. I think what people are angry about is this sense of, well, wouldn't God favor a meritocracy? Wouldn't he choose who's more or less important based on individual actions? How can it be that I'm born into chosenness? That seems to be unfair, because that would mean that I was basically given a leg up, an advantage in the race without having deserved it, right? I think that's one of the big issues that people have with chosenness. I don't think people would say, well, I guess every individual can earn chosenness based on your actions throughout your life. I think people would say, fine, fair enough. Like, you worked hard for it, you deserved it. But it's specifically the idea that the Jewish people, it's like an inherited thing that we're chosen. But I would claim that even that is not something that people are really bothered by. And the way that I would prove it is that there is a mythology that stands at the core of 21st century Western thought that everyone is totally fine with and champions as an incredibly powerful way to understand the world and what heroism really is. And that story is Harry Potter. Now, you and I have done an episode on Harry Potter, but if you think about it, at the heart of the story of Harry Potter is a boy who is pretty much chosen from birth to be a hero, to have more potential than anybody else. And if he lives up to that potential, only he is able to defeat evil and nobody else. Now, tell me something. How many people are rioting in the streets because Harry Potter presents a bigoted view that somebody can be born for greatness, that other people don't get a shot at? Nobody. I think everybody is totally fine with that narrative. So when people raise this bluster about, oh, how can you be born into the chosen people? People are born with differences all the time. Some people are born with an incredible athletic ability, and those people, if they harness it correctly, will have a chance for greatness in their area of expertise that other people do not have a chance to do. They will not ever make it to the NBA because they're 4'9" and this guy's 6'8", and it's just never going to happen. And other people are born with phenomenal intellects, and those people will have the chance for their greatness. So I'm calling bluff on the people who claim to get so angry about the idea that God can have a quote unquote chosen people that is something that's inherited as opposed to something that every individual has to earn on their own. So these two things I would use to demonstrate exactly what chosenness is and to try to calm down some of the conversation around this very contentious idea.
I actually love that because those two ideas actually blend perfectly into what I was hoping to say. Like literally, it's an excellent analogy. The way I've heard the chosen, like, what does it mean to be chosen? I've heard it's like when you're chosen for a specific task. If my parents were like, hey, if you're chosen to take out the garbage, it's like a responsibility. Like you now have an extra job to do. And that's what it means. And to bring it to Harry Potter in terms of he was chosen. He was chosen what to kind of to become the, what do they call it, the minister of magic? No, he was chosen for the specific task of defeating Voldemort. Many people would not want this task. It's an extremely important task, but he's the one to do it, and it's effectively a responsibility that he has to perform. And if he actualizes his potential, obviously the rewards are enormous. And I love that. That's kind of a great analogy for what it is. The Jewish people, tell me if I'm saying this correctly, the Jewish people are chosen for a task. It's a responsibility. Is that how you would phrase it?
Yes, it is absolutely a responsibility, but I don't want to whitewash it, meaning I don't want to overlook the idea that there is a principle in the Talmud that says one who is commanded and performs that action is greater than somebody who performs an action for which he is not commanded. So there is an understanding that with the responsibility comes the potential for much greater divine connection, much greater lofty spiritual heights. Look, think about it this way. How many Jews are upset that because Max Cohen is born as a Cohen, he has the potential for much higher spiritual lofty heights than I do because I'm a regular Jew. Max Cohen gets to go into the temple. He gets to purify himself. He gets to offer offerings. One guy gets chosen to go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim and come as close to encountering the divine as any human being ever can. And I will never have that opportunity. And how many Jews are so angry and so upset about that? So I think that we're actually pretty okay with hierarchy. You're right. It's a hierarchy of responsibility. And that responsibility comes with a tremendous potential for divine spiritual reward. But that's just the way that the world works. And I think we're okay with that because it doesn't undermine the fact that every individual does have a potential to fulfill. And if we're able to find our unique task for which we were chosen, which comes with a responsibility, then all God asks from us is to fulfill our particular potential and not to look at the other guy. And I think that that's something that intuitively, I think we're really okay with that.
That's great. And you actually picked up on an idea that I definitely want to discuss more. And that is the idea of, you mentioned that something about like being commanded, like if one who is commanded is greater than a person who is not commanded. Sorry, can you just rehash that? Like, okay, restate that, and do you want us to elaborate on what exactly that means?
Yeah, so the Talmud says, Gadol hamatzuva va'osa yoser misha ena matzuva va'osa. Greater is one who is commanded and does than one who is not commanded and does. So essentially what it means is, Ophir, it's a really amazing thing to, let's say, drink Kiddush wine on a Friday night. I don't know.
Or go visit a sick person, like some maybe.
Yeah, go visit a sick person. Although I think pretty much most people are commanded to go visit a sick person. I think that's a basic, bein adam lechavero, interpersonal mitzvah that even non-Jews would have. But a greater example. So let's say eating kosher or something like that, right? Like,
so the reason why I like that is because I think some people would be like, I may not want to go visit the sick person, but I'm just doing it because I'm commanded, as opposed to a person who has a natural, intuitive, feel like I'm just doing because I'm a good person.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So okay. So look. Let me just lay out kind of the basic case, and then we can understand why it actually, people might think that it's actually very strange. So the case is that if I have a mitzvah, if I have a mitzvah to go do something, let's say I have a mitzvah to give charity, for example, right? So I do it because I'm commanded to do it, as opposed to somebody who says, look, I have no obligation to give. I've never been commanded in my life, but out of the goodness of my heart, I'm going to give anyway. So that the natural understanding would be that the second guy is actually doing something greater, as opposed to the first guy who's doing it because he has to do it. The Talmud comes along and actually flips it on its head and says, actually, the first guy is doing a greater deed than the second guy. Now, there are multiple interpretations about what does it mean that act is greater, or that the person doing it is greater. On a simple level, one commentary simply says, well, as soon as you're commanded to do something, it's actually harder to do it. So you get more reward for it, right? As if you out of the goodness of your heart, you want to clean your room, so you go right around and you're singing and dancing as you put things away. But as soon as your mom tells you you've got to clean your room, oh, Mom, I can't believe I have to clean my room. And so you're dragging stuff around and throwing stuff in its place. So you have to fight that urge to want to rebel against authority. So that's a simple level way of understanding it. A deeper level of understanding would be that a mitzvah itself is the creation of an act, a potential act of connection. If your parent says, I really want you to go clean your room, so then cleaning your room is no longer just putting away your toys and living in a clean room. You now have the opportunity to come closer with your parent because you've obeyed what they've said to do. You've done what they've asked you to do. That creates a relationship, not just a clean room. So that's another understanding of why it's greater to act when commanded as opposed to somebody who is not commanded at all. And there's more interpretations, but I think that's a pretty sufficient one for now.
Yeah, mind if I actually, I've heard another one that I think actually kind of touches on what you mentioned.
Go for it.
Yeah, there's one that I heard. This is also from Rabbi Tatz. I think this we're seeing the common threads. He said something very similar in terms of creating the connection. But he also said it also creates an anchor for like when I clean my room because I want to clean my room, or I go visit someone who's sick because I think it's a nice thing to do. Then the best I can do is as good as I am. Once you're commanded to do something by God or by someone else who has a higher standard of morality to you, then naturally you are actually going to get elevated to that level. And the example I give, honestly, is very straightforward. And you're speaking about parents. I remember when I was 16, I was in France with my mom and my dad, and we went through the subway, and there was this homeless guy there. So my mom gave me a coin. She's like, Ophir, go give it to that guy. So I did. Literally 2 minutes later, we saw another homeless guy, and my mom gave me another coin and said, go give it to that guy. And I said, why? We just did that 2 minutes ago. We're not going to give it to every single person in town. And my mom said, shifting the language a bit, she's like, be quiet and go do it. And I did. Now, I thought about that because I thought that was very interesting. I would not have thought to do that. We gave the coin. That was a very nice thing to do. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm done for the day. But then when I thought about it, I was like, my mom recognized that the fact that we gave a coin to one guy does not help the second guy. She wanted me to understand that just because you do one nice thing doesn't mean you're finished for the day and you could pick up tomorrow. It means there are other people who need help and you can help more people. I did not understand that. I needed my mother to teach me that. And if I had just stayed at my own level, maybe eventually when I was older, I would have figured it out, but not when I was 16. And I think the idea of a myth, like one of the ideas of the mitzvah, as like Rabbi Tad speaks about it, is not only are you creating a relationship, you're also creating an anchor that effectively God is teaching you, you might not have figured this out for yourself, but if you connect to me through the Torah, then you will understand how to act more appropriately.
Beautiful. God is the ultimate coach who's showing you how great you could be when you don't even realize it yourself.
Right.
Yeah. Amazing.
Cool. Thank you. So I think we hit on a lot of ideas. I guess before, there's so much more to go through, but I guess the central questions of this episode were as it kind of brought out through this show, Nobody Wants This, is again, will there be a conflict if they're with an intermarried couple? Will the kids grow up confused? And we spoke about Jewish values. I guess first, is there anything else that you want to add to this? I guess we'll start with that. Is there anything else that you feel like we haven't touched upon that we should, that it would be like a big mistake to not touch upon?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about. There are a lot of Jewish values that I wish more Jews knew were Jewish values. I almost wish that there would be more conflict in intermarried couples, because then at least the Jewish partner would realize what it is that makes them Jewish and unique. Um, like I said, there's many, many, many uniquely Jewish values, and one of the great shames of the 21st century is that we have kind of watered down all religions, so that this kind of pseudo accepting, tolerant idea that really we're all deep down, we're all the same, which is nonsense. What it really means is I haven't spent enough time. Um, I don't have enough respect for all the different religions to actually go in and look at what they all are saying. So instead, I'm just going to say this thing that sounds really nice, and then we'll all get along. I think that it's really important to be different. I think what that means is that you recognize that that where things come from, and the religions, the traditions that have arisen in the world, not just the Jewish ones, all of them, they're worthy of being listened to. They're saying something in the world, and you have to take them seriously. And it's actually, more often than not, just a cop-out to say, deep down, we're really all the same. So I want to see a bit more discussion. I want to see a bit more argumentation. I want to see a bit more debate. I don't want everybody to be the same. And maybe there's no better place to demonstrate that with two people who, for all intents and purposes, might be very attracted to each other and might have a lot of chemistry. But if they really cared about their values, they would understand that there's something really fundamentally incompatible about the two of them. Unfortunately, we just don't respect those traditions enough to care.
Right. And to this, that actually also came with Rabbi Rick, that at the end of the day, it just seemed like Rabbi Noah it was just like a lack of priority. He didn't care. If he cared enough, then he would have made it a priority and made a decision accordingly, but he didn't. Right. And in fact, like one of the things he says is he's like, I don't care if you're Jewish. I don't care if you're not Jewish. That almost says it all.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, what he's essentially doing is he's failing to take into account the entire part of his identity, the hundreds of generations that came before him and the hundreds of generations that are going to come after him. And he's essentially giving in to temptation. He's choosing to engage in the physical in totally the wrong way.
And on that note, this was also a request. Can we kind of quickly sum up in kind of 60 seconds, just a quick bullet point list of the ideas we spoke about? Just so like for our listeners, what are the takeaways?
Yeah. So if my memory serves me well, I think we hit on basically three major topics. The first two had to do with what are real Jewish values in the world. We spoke about the idea of disagreement, argument, debating God, understanding that there is bottom-up truth as well as top-down truth, and that comes from this idea that human beings contain a spark of the divine inside of them. And that's where we get the idea that we are allowed to challenge very big ideas. That's number one. And of course, that trickles down into all sorts of cultural attributions, like the fact that we're funny and the fact that we like debating and the fact that we can become very good scientists and people who look at the world in very different ways. The second thing we spoke about is the wonderful Jewish value of finding holiness in the physical world, not seeing physicality as a temptation, but rather as a tool, a means towards elevating it and ourselves higher in our connection with God, and all of the wonderful things that come along with that. And of course, that trickles down into the cultural ideas that we love food. We are not afraid to be proud of being successful in business, and that we ultimately see the world as a friendly place and not as a scary place. And then I think we spoke towards the end, just a little bit of a detour from the main topic, but pertinent nonetheless, which is, what does it mean to be the chosen people? And we spoke about how chosenness does not mean that other people are not vital as the Jewish people are, but rather there might be some sort of hierarchy in terms of the Jewish people being chosen to direct, to inform, to remind all of the other nations why we're here and what their vital contribution is going towards. And as well, I tried to debunk the idea that we should be somehow outraged at the fact that Jewish people claim to be chosen simply by birth, and that really there are so many stories that you and I know and love that have that exact same narrative, that somebody's chosen by birth, and that makes them special, and we're totally okay with that. And then I think that's I think that's kind of where we wrapped up, right?
Yes.
Anything else that I forgot?
No, I think that sounds great. I actually do it just as a point of clarification. I meant to do this earlier, where you said like it was the Jewish people are vital in that we inform others in terms of how did you phrase it? We inform others
Of why they're so vital. I mean, again, it's like if the spleen doesn't know that it's part of a human body, then the spleen will become a renegade organ and possibly even attack its own body. So you need the brain to be the central unifying force that says, hey, spleen, hey, liver, hey, intestines, do you realize that you are here to create a human being? Isn't that awesome? Isn't that why you should, that should inform every single thing that you do? So that's kind of how I saw how the Kuzari sees the Jewish people.
And to bring it to the Jewish people, our goal to what we're informing that our message is that the world is meant to be elevated. Is that I just want to make sure I'm connecting these ideas. What exactly is the message that the Jewish people are supposed to be sending?
Okay, so we're in Exodus. God calls the Jewish people a mamleches kohanim, a nation of priests. Okay,
right.
So the Sforno says, well, what are the kohanim? Do the Jewish people, are they all slaves to the Kohen? Are they all subservient to the Kohen? Or to the opposite, do the Kohanim exist in order to facilitate the divine service of the Jewish people and help bring all the Jewish people closer to God? That's how we as a nation are meant to see ourselves in relationship to the other nations of the world. We're the Kohanim. We tell them, you guys have something extremely essential to contribute to the world, to offer to God. We're here to help facilitate that service.
That's awesome. And then just again, that sounds abstract. Can we just bring it down to what does that look like on ground level?
Okay, let's say America. You guys are fantastic at innovation, at technological progress, at entrepreneurship. That's incredible. Why don't you use all of those skills towards making the world a better place, towards creating a universe that allows us to do more mitzvahs and to connect with God in a better way? Switzerland, Germany, you guys are phenomenal at engineering. So why don't you create things that just help the world, help people to connect with each other better, help people to do more good deeds with your innovation and with your prowess. And every single nation has a unique contribution in their own way. In the same way that the intestines helps get all the good nutrients out of the food, and the liver helps to take out some of the toxins. Every single nation has a unique contribution, and we're here to remind them, by the way, this is what you should be using your strengths for.
Awesome. That's amazing. Rabbi Friedman, thanks again for joining us. And thanks again for the quick summary and for just providing so much clarity to this topic.
No, it's been so much fun, like always.
Yes, it always is. All right, thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the Dilemmas on Screen, a Jewish Perspective podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. If you have any suggestions for a moral dilemma you'd like analyzed, feel free to send it over. Thanks again, and see you next time.